Well, welcome everybody. This video is going to be a completely crazy video, but I think you'll see that what I'm saying is true. And I want to just express some things that I think you will see that will come about very soon. I guess the title of this is Things That Are About to Happen in the USA Very Soon. And I had shared in previous videos about a perfect storm of events that were possible in the U.S., and I shared about a prosperity period ending that God had shown me that will end around March 2026. And so I want to talk about things about to happen in this country and that people are not at all prepared for. So I want to, first of all, talk about the exposure of the Epstein files, which this will also include stuff like the Wiener laptop, other honeypots like Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Mansion, things that have not at all really gone public of the full depth of the things that have gone on. Things, what a lot of these honeypots have also involved very clearly now that can be proven. The Mossad, which is the Israeli intelligence, along with possibly with the CIA, FBI, etc. So those are things that are about to hit, and I'm going to talk in a second about, well, a couple things. So there's much more things that have not been revealed when it comes to the Epstein file. People think, oh, that's, it was all the things. No. There's a lot of things have not come out. Jeffrey Epstein had video on every room in his house, and the same with Hugh Hefner in the Playboy Mansion. So, there's a lot of stuff that has not at all been shown, or any of the tunnels in the Epstein Island, for instance, in Virgin Islands. So there's a lot of videos that have not been shown, and things that they're going to have to black out portions of it. Very little has actually been shown, and we've just seen some emails for the most part, and a couple little videos here and there. But there's a huge amount of things that have not been shown yet, proven yet, which will come to light. And there's other things about to happen where I'm going to show you, and there's videos and things being discussed that in about 18 months, the majority of white-collar workers in America are going to be unemployed. So this could be anywhere, let's say, from 75% to 90%. And they're going to be replaced by AI. You think about the movie industry, computer programmers, music industry, all this stuff is at the point now with AI where we're just about at the point where you don't need people anymore. A majority of people are unnecessary in those industries even. For instance, like computer programming, they can do a better job. AI can do a better job than humans can now and be much more productive. So these things are on the way. And when you think about, they were talking about how if, let's say, you add an additional 3% of the workforce is unemployed, it's a huge thing, and it would seriously impact our country. But when you're talking about 75 to 90% of people being replaced, and people say, well, we still have plumbers, we still have all these other people. Well, they've got $4,000 robots now, and they're going to get to the point very soon, within the next year or two, where these robots are going to be as smart as Einstein. So if you think that, and these things are learn at a much faster level than humans do. We have even as people get older, they kind of decrease in their learning ability, but these robots, these AI robots, can be bought for $4,000 at this point now even, and can have an intelligence that's smarter than Einstein. So obviously the blue-collar workers, they're going to be replaced as well, probably even at the same, in my opinion, the same pace. This is all to be driven by countries and by corporations and things where, would you rather have a $4,000 robot that doesn't have to sleep, or would you rather have a $100,000 person, that makes mistakes and has all kinds of issues and medical things and, all kinds of problems? Of course, these companies and corporations are going to, the countries are going to choose a $4,000 robot. Obviously, we've had decades of corruption in this country. They were supposed to do an audit of Fort Knox, and all of a sudden that whole thing disappeared. So we don't even know. You look at bank derivatives and all that stuff. They've been getting away with so much corruption for many, many decades in this country, of money stolen from people. And, it's all based on based on people's perception if things are good. And once those things come to light, then that's going to add to a huge problem. And then we have now, Trump's been saying even now that there's going to be an exposure of aliens. That we've just seen the tip of the iceberg, barely even like Epstein, with aliens, we've seen the tip of the iceberg of what's really out there, what's going on, what has been going on. We're going to see a huge, I guess, discovery, not really discovery, but a huge exposure of the alien stuff coming out as well. And Trump has been alluding to that, those things happening as well. I want to really, Trump, this whole the MAGA movement, Trump and everything, whether you're for it or against it or whatever, at least you could say Trump has been a sort of stabilizing force to the country as far as economically and all that. Whatever his involvement, it's really come out now that he was heavily involved with the Playboy Mansion, Hugh Hefner, and that was one big honeypot. And Hugh Hefner would have video cameras in all his rooms and all that stuff. So, and anything that Trump was involved with when it comes to Epstein, I don't think it's quite as large as what people say, but maybe it is. Who knows? I don't know. And then there's a whole lot of more even insane things in the Wiener laptop that hasn't come out really to the public. We haven't seen any videos of Epstein Island or his New York City apartment or the Zorro Ranch. We know there's a lot of kiddie things done there. Now, it's pretty readily known that there's, that things were eaten. Let's put it that way. Objects that were 2 to 7 foot tall that were eaten. They were talking about jerky and dead meat and all this other kind of stuff. So that's pretty obvious of anybody that has a brain to figure out what's been going on there. And there's actually been pictures of people like Rachel Chandler's Instagram account that have showed this stuff. If you actually look at the pictures and have a little bit of discernment, you'll know what's been going on. So all this stuff has not been shown to the public, and it will all be exposed. It's all going to come out. Trump has a huge thing where he's got to make a decision. Is he going to really talk about the honeypots and what's been going on with Israel and what's been going on, especially with Mossad? These things are going to cause a huge destabilization. The people are going to be on like Stockholm syndrome, I think, the American public. And we haven't even really talked about aliens and stuff like that, what they've been doing as far as the portals. When they do these sacrifices, it's pretty well known. Even throughout history, this has been, the Mayans were doing that. That's why they were sacrificing a lot of these people. Well, not so much the Aztecs and, cultures like that were doing human sacrifices because they brought these interdimensional beings. If you look at the Tahamura Indians in Peru, they're like the descendants of these people, but they would see aliens, they would see these interdimensional beings come when there's a huge amount of human sacrifice. So people have been opening these portals for a long time. I mean, especially in the last, let's say 2 decades. You look, there's things that have happened like in the Indian Ocean, like huge, I think there was something like 70 or 80 navies of the world went to because they were like, what is going on next to Djibouti, I guess they call it the country. All these things are coming out. They're opening portals with CERN and that type of thing that are pretty clear that this is not just a science experiment. They're doing things with reality, and we're going to start seeing the days, and we could see stuff in, let's say, in major cities, let's say New York City, Central Park. We could start seeing these aliens. We could start seeing interdimensional beings. We know they've been trying to work with human hybrids with animals. This is sick stuff. But this has been going on. I've seen a couple of videos that are, to me, look very real. Isn't just like, it looks very real and very typical videos that aren't just AI videos. We could see people, these interdimensional beings, these lizard people, these half-human, hybrid creatures, whatever they're doing with, these kind of experiments they've been doing for a long time, walking down the street, And obviously, the way they've been doing things when it comes to, they're going to say, well, they've been saying stuff like men can have babies, or, they're putting ketchup in places that they shouldn't. Just the mental illness going around, but this is all mental conditioning to get ready for these type of things, for people to see these kind of abominations. They've already got robots with, babies' uteruses. The uteruses carrying babies already. They've already created these things, these robots with AI. You already see it coming. Where people, let's say on the left, are going to say, these aliens, interdimensional beings, half human, half animal abominations, these robot baby AI machines or whatever, they have feelings and rights too. You know it's coming. They're going to say this stuff when it comes out. You can call me crazy, but I'm telling you that this is what's going to happen, because this is the whole course of what they're going to. This is what they've been showing the whole time. And we're going to have places, we're going to have compromised leaders, like it's pretty obvious if you look into, Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance and people like that they have connections to people that are very nefarious. That Rubio's past and the people that J.D. Vance, I'm not going to get into it, but some of the people and groups that he's tied to are not for us, the American people, or just they're not good connections. I'll put it that way. So these people can be there can be a lot of interference with foreign countries and the things that people want to do. They can be promised lots of wealth, lots of whatever in the future to just look the other way. So this severely weakens our country. The average people like you and I, people have talked about assassination of Trump. They've been talking about, or you could look at it and say maybe possibly be even removed from office with all this Epstein stuff and all the Hugh Hefner connections there. And just a general destabilization of, let's say, Congress. If, I don't know how many people, they did a kind of like a little trap where all the people that searched for their names, they kept a log of who searched for what out of all the congressmen. And there was a whole bunch of them looking at themselves and see if they were in the Epstein files. And a lot still haven't been even released yet. There could be a huge public outcry. And you want to say this, Hillary, she was talking about, if I'm going down, everybody's going down. And literally, she is going to go down. I mean, she's definitely going to end up in a whole lot of trouble. The thing is, she's pushing for full transparency of everything. And the reason really she's doing that is because she wants to see this country completely destroyed. She would rather have herself, be shot and whatever, be hung or whatever, and see this country be destroyed. Like that would be the same as George Soros. That would be their crowning jewel, is to see freedom in America and Christianity and belief in God be, completely taken down. And just the pain and suffering of many people. Like that's really, she's clearly a witch, a high-level witch. I mean, that's pretty obvious if anybody's paying attention. So she would love to see this country be completely destroyed. And I know this doesn't sound good, but I want to, what our faith needs to be in is in God. And also, we're going to have race riots. They're going to start with the anti-this race against that race, against, all that stuff. Anti-federal government stuff, due to the fact that all these people are going to be unemployed. There's going to be market crashes. There's going to be hyperinflation. Universal basic income, housing collapse, because all these people with these huge homes can't afford them anymore, because they're going to have a stipend of, let's say, $20,000 or $10,000 a year. Civil war, for race, for financial reasons. There's going to be inequality with who gets paid what. There's going to be some people making money, there's lots of people losing money, and there's going to be people displaced. And so there's going to be destabilization coming when half the work, let's say 75%, 80% of the workforce is unemployed. That is a huge consequence. And so people are not at all prepared for it. They're not thinking about it. I don't think, when it comes to advances in, just in humanity, look at the industrial age, look at what airplanes brought, look at what, the engine and automobiles, and then look at plastics, and pharmaceuticals. Look at the advance of that. But the coming disruption when it comes to AI will be much larger than any of those when you really start understanding this stuff. We're going to have all these issues coming up. I kind of maybe say this jokingly too, but not really actually, because I have to be serious about this. But if there's aliens, interdimensional beings, robot AI things, as a follower of Jesus, you should not at all, first of all, have these things in your home. But secondly, you should not befriend these things in any way. These are demonic. AI is demonic. That's why it says artificial intelligence. It literally means false intelligence, which is like a false god. Okay? And if you're letting these things in your home, if you're, cozying up to robots, AI robots, lizard people, aliens, if you're getting intimate with them, I mean, you should not be doing any of this stuff. And there's judgment coming because of it. So I'm just going to say, there's obviously, now they're getting ready for the sex robots, all this stuff, girlfriends. I mean, you should have nothing to do with any of this stuff if you're following Jesus, if you're truly following God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Jesus, I should say. These are the things that are coming. I want to share in a scripture. This is the last thing I'm going to share. It's Genesis chapter 6, verses 2 through 7. We're going to read that. It says, "Then the sons of God saw the daughters of men were beautiful and desirable, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose and desired. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive and remain with man forever, because he is indeed flesh, sinful, corrupt, given over to sensual appetites. Nevertheless, his days yet shall be 120 years. There were Nephilim, men of stature, notorious men on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God lived with the daughters of men, and they gave birth to their children. These were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown, great reputation, and fame. The Lord saw the wickedness, depravity of the men was great in the earth, and that every imagination or intent of the thought of his heart was only evil continually. The Lord regretted that he had made mankind on earth, so he was deeply grieved in his heart." So then he goes on and he basically destroys, he uses Noah to preach unrighteousness, and he destroys these people that were involved in these things, the Nephilim, and they're, obviously people like the Goliath, and Goliath obviously had other related giants and people like him that were involved. These were creations, abominations, because it was God who created the human genome. They started mixing with other things. Intermarrying, it talks about the angels and humans. And so, God had a purpose with human. He created humanity to basically as an image of him. And so it was a perfect creation, the way he created it. But instead, every time they try to change the genome and try to introduce these, human-like creatures and things like that, and giants and all these other interdimensional being creations and stuff like that, that is what, obviously, God has come and destroy those creations. That's why it's important that, first of all, there's a need for judgment. There's a need for cleansing of these things, because the pride of humanity, the pride of what has been going on, especially now, let's say the last, it's been going on for the last 100 years, really, but in recent times, especially the last couple of decades, and they're going full steam ahead with this craziness. So I want to say that, really, God always has a remnant. He will always use his true people that are sincerely following him, obeying him to the best of their ability. That is what he's going to deliver his people. But there's going to be judgment upon the rest of the world for the things that are going on. So we could literally see America being invaded. We could see, from all those things I had spoken about, there's just a complete destabilization of our country. And this is all planned. The devil obviously planned this, and it wants to completely destroy humanity in the way God created it, have this abomination in place instead. And I think if you look at the things I'm saying, you're going to find these are really true. I could show you, I'm going to add some articles from different respected journalists saying these things as well, that I'm not just crazy, that these things are actually being spoken about currently, but we've just seen the tip of the iceberg of many of these things. We haven't seen full exposure of these things. So I'm trying to prepare. I've always just tried to prepare people, whether it be through these, medical experimentation, whether it be all the things going on, but I always feel like I have to tell the truth. I have to tell people what is really going on. And so I hope that it causes you to seek out with all your heart. I hope it causes you to truly, it says in James, not just look in the mirror and walk away, but that you develop a true relationship with God, and then you examine your life. What is it that pleases God, and learn what pleases him, and learn to avoid what doesn't please him. That is what's going to save you in the end. I encourage you and to keep going in your faith, to examine your life, and to continue having faith in Jesus. Thanks for watching, and I told you to be a crazy one. So anyways, talk to you soon. Thanks.
You stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Gotcha. You've